This week, the Senate continues debating the National Defense Authorization Act. This legislation reflects our nation's military and national security priorities. The decisions we make today will affect not only our lives, but those of future generations. We face serious times as a nation. Our constitutional rights are under assault. We have economic stagnation, young people yearning for employment opportunities only to find none, and government regulations that crush innovations. And abroad and at home, the threat growing each and every day of radical Islamic terrorism. In order to best ensure the future of our nation, we must make sure America is secure. The most important constitutionally mandated responsibility of the federal government, the one authority that it must, not merely can, exercise, is to provide for the common defense. And there's no better example of how egregiously we've strayed from our core function than the way in which our spending on defense has been held hostage year after year to the ever-increasing appetite for domestic spending by President Obama and his political allies. The programs they are forcing on the American people aren't necessary to protect our lives and safety, but funding our nation's security is necessary, and it is in this spirit that I've approached my work on the National Defense Authorization Act, and I look forward to continuing this debate with colleagues on both sides of the aisle. My goal for the NDAA is simple. We need to make sure our military is strong, our homeland is secure, and our interests abroad are protected. The NDAA shouldn't be a vehicle to further an agenda that has nothing to do with actually defending America. On the Senate Armed Services Committee, I was proud to work with my colleagues, both Republicans and Democrats, in introducing and getting adopted 12 amendments. 12 amendments that were included in this legislation that covered the range of policy issues from strengthening our ability to protect ourselves through missile defense, to improving our ability to stand with allies such as the nation of Taiwan, to improving our ability to deal with the growing threats from nations like Russia and China, to prohibiting joint military exercises with Cuba, to preventing the transfer of terrorists from Guantanamo to nations that are on the State Department's watch list. All of those were done working closely with colleagues, Republicans, and often many Democrats. And yet, there are still many issues that I believe should be addressed in this legislation, and I want to highlight 3 of those issues, 3 amendments that I hope this full body will take up. The first is an amendment to increase spending on Israeli missile defense. And this is an amendment that I have been working very, very closely with the senior senator from South Carolina, Senator Graham. The second is an amendment to stop the Obama administration's plan to give away the internet to empower our enemies over the internet. And on this, I have been working closely with Senator Lee from Utah and Senator Lankford from Oklahoma. And the third amendment I want to address is an amendment to strip the citizenship from any Americans who take up arms and join ISIS or other terrorist organizations waging jihad against the United States of America. And in this, I've worked with a number of senators, including Chairman Grassley on the Judiciary Committee. Each of these amendments addresses different policy components of our nation's security, but they all share the ultimate objective of ensuring that America remains the strongest nation that the world has ever known. The first amendment that I've introduced that I would urge this body to take up would increase funding for our cooperative missile defense program with Israel to ensure that our ally, our close friend, can procure the necessary vital assets and conduct further mutually beneficial research and development efforts. This has been an ongoing partnership between Israel and the United States of America, and yet, unfortunately, the Obama administration, in its request submitted to Congress, zeroed out procurement for David Sling and Arrow 2 and 3, vital elements of Israeli missile defense. This is at a time when the threats are growing. The administration decided 0 was the appropriate level. Respectfully, I disagree. This amendment would fully fund procurement for Israeli missile defense. Now, much of this Missile defense is done in partnership, working closely with American corporations, producing jobs here at home, but it is also vital to our national security as we see a proliferation of threats across the world. The technology of intersecting incoming threats, intersecting incoming missiles before they can take the lives of innocents is all the more important. And we're at a time when the administration has funneled hundreds of millions and headed to billions of dollars to Iran and their despotic regime. The administration knows, they acknowledge that substantial portions of those funds will be used to fund radical Islamic terrorists, will be used to fund efforts to murder Israelis, to murder Americans. And yet, nonetheless, it is U.S. taxpayer dollars and dollars under the control of our government, billions going to the Ayatollah Khamenei, who chants and pledges death to America and death to Israel as a result of the fecklessness of our foreign policy. Our closest ally in the Middle East remains in a deeply troubling and precarious position. Israel must be prepared to defend against Hamas and Hezbollah, rocket stockpiles that are being rebuilt and improved, while also being forced to counter an increasingly capable adversary in the nation of Iran intent on the destruction of Israel. We must not fail in our obligation to stand with Israel, and it is my hope that if and when this body takes up this amendment, that we will stand in bipartisan unity, standing with Israel against the radical Islamic terrorists who seek to destroy both them and us. And in doing so, we will further both Israeli national security and the safety and security of the United States of America. In addition,